Okay, guys, so as I was saying, we have our trophic levels here, and we're looking at our food web, and we're going ahead and we're starting to label some of our trophic levels. So our plants are obviously going to be our producers. These guys that eat the plant are herbivores, and they are our primary consumers because they are the first ones that we have on there. The next one is our secondary consumers, and they can go either way. They can be omnivores or carnivores. And you guys see on there carne, right, which is meat, right, and omnivores, which is going ahead and eating both, right? So omnivores is both, right, and carnivores is meat. Right, and those are our secondary consumers, and then up here towards the top, this is our tertiary consumers. And they go ahead, and these are usually some of our top predators are in this category. These ones are strictly carnivores, right, and they're the ones that go ahead and they eat meat. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about our energy and how much energy is at each level. So, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, our producers are the ones with the most energy, right? So looking at these numbers on here, we have our highest number is 600,000, right? And they have joules. Joules is just a unit of energy that we use in science, right? Now, since in each trophic level, right, only 10% of the energy is passed on. And then again, that is our rule of 10%. So what happens is that 90% of the energy that these plants produce, so 90% of this number right here, it gets used for living, right? So 90% is used for living, right? 10% is passed on, and that goes for every level. So an easy way to go ahead and to figure out how much is 10%, right? You guys just go ahead and you smack off 1 0. So you guys will see on here that I dropped a 0, right? And then that is how many joules is on there, right? Same deal on here, right? I go ahead and I write this number and I drop a 0 and I get 6,000. And then I go ahead and I drop a 0 and I get 600. And again, for each level, right, 90% is used for living, 10% can be passed. So over time, right, there's just less energy available as you guys go up the food chain. That doesn't mean that the food isn't nutritious or anything. It just means that there is by far less energy that is there. Okay, so that is our thing on there. I already went over these things. So herbivore, again, eats plants, like plant eater, right? Omnivore is both plants and animals. Plants plus animals. And then our next thing is we have carnivores, which is meat. Right? So we have our meat eaters. So we have our meat eaters on there. And then our rule of 10% is only 10% of energy gets passed from level to level. Level to level. Okay? So those is our quick little vocab. Okay. So the next thing is to go ahead and to use the following food web to go ahead and to answer a few of these questions for us. Okay. So looking at this food web, right, we have to go ahead and before we kind of get into this food web, what I want to do is I want you guys to make sure that you know the different parts of the food web so that we are clear on all of those things on there. So with this, right, we are looking at our animals and we see that we have numbers attached to them, right? And they're going ahead and they're asking, the numbers is how much energy each of those things have. Then we go ahead and we look at all of the arrows that we have going on here, right? And there's just a bunch of arrows. The thing that I want you guys to know about these arrows and to notice is that if you guys are looking at this, right, the fungi has an arrow pointing to the deer, right? So we have this fungi that's pointing an arrow to the deer. If this arrow is pointing to the deer, the arrow means that energy is being passed. Arrow is energy flow, right? And the arrow's energy flow, it does not mean that, oh, like the fungi is eating the deer, right? Because that doesn't make any sense, right? So the arrow, you guys have to make sure that the arrow, you guys know, is the energy flowing. So this arrow means that the energy is flowing from the berries to the bunny, right? Same deal as a food chain, right? So a food chain, right? In this case, we have berries, right? They go ahead and go to the bunny, right? And from the bunny, it goes to the coyote. And then from the coyote, we go to the wolf, right? And that is how energy is being passed on there, right? So again, right, this is energy flow. So that is how the energy is moving through the ecosystem. So what you have to think about is this food web is just a bunch of different food chains that are combined together, right? And we're just putting them all on the same page, right? So again, now they're going ahead and asking us how much energy do all the producers have, right? So what I go ahead and I do is I find my producers. My producers are typically going to be at the bottom. And right here are all my producers, my grass, my berries, and my fungi, right? And now I have to figure out how much energy they have. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add. So I go ahead and I add 500,000 plus 60,000 plus 70,000, right? And if I go ahead and if I add all of those numbers together, right, I am going to have, let me double check that real quick. 6 plus, so plus, right, so I have 6 joules, right? And that is, I get this number by going ahead and adding it, right? So I want to make sure that I'm adding all of those guys. Okay, the next thing is which animal is your apex predator? So I'm looking at my food chain and now I have to figure out where is all of the energy going, right? So I'm looking for the one that has all of the energy going towards it. So I go ahead and I'm looking at this. I see the energy from the rat, the sheep, the deer, the coyote, the falcon, the hawk, right? All of this energy is going towards the red wolf, right? So if I'm going ahead and I'm looking at where the energy is going towards, energy is here, right? So all the energy is right here, which means that this wolf is our apex predator, right? So our wolf is our apex, right? And that is because all the energy is going towards that wolf, right? All right, secondary consumers. So my secondary consumers, you guys can also think about secondary consumers as the people who are second to the plant, who get to the plant second, okay? So I'm going ahead and I'm looking through here, right? And I'm looking through here, and these guys right here, my rat, my sheep, my deer, and my bunny, they all eat plants. So they are all primary consumers. Now I go ahead and I'm looking at that. So what is the next level up, right? So I have a couple of secondary consumers here, right? So I'm looking here and I'm looking at where my energy from these guys are going to. So if I look here, right, I have an arrow here. I have an arrow that goes here. And then I have arrows that go to my wolf, right? My wolf, although he is an apex predator, right, he also kind of eats from a couple of different places, right? So we can say that I have 2 types of secondary consumers. I have my wolf, who's my secondary consumer, and I have my coyote, who's my secondary consumer. Let me just double check that. Coyote, who's also my secondary consumer. Next thing are my herbivores. My herbivores are AKA my primary consumers, right? So looking at that, right, I have a few on there. So I have my rat, my deer, my sheep, and my bunny. And those are all herbivores. Next thing are my carnivores, right? So I look at everybody who's eating meat, right? So I would have my coyote, my red wolf, my hawk, and my falcon, right? No, just my red wolf and my coyote. Yeah, just my red wolf and coyote. Red wolf / coyote. My hawk and my falcon are not on there. Okay, and then I